Support for Connecticut East this week comes from the Connecticut Technology Council, presenting the 19th Annual Women in Innovation Awards, Tuesday, October 22nd in Branford, honouring outstanding women in the STEM fields. To learn more and to purchase tickets for the event, visit ct.org/Women of Innovation. Nutmeg Pharmacy, reminding you to get your flu, COVID and RSV vaccinations now to protect you and your loved ones. Visit us in Higganum, Moodus, Centrebrook, Taffill and New London, and at our website at nutmegpharmacy.com. And Media Here and Now, a full-service content creation agency producing video, audio, podcasts, and digital content for social media, online, and broadcast use for all types of businesses, organizations, and non-profits. Find out more at mediahereandnow.com. They're one of 34 organizations across the nation helping to educate and empower people about the living environment around them. We talk to Connecticut Sea Grant about their work and how we're doing on the environment. Plus, we take a look at other stories making the headlines from around the region. This is Connecticut East This Week. Hello, I'm Brian Scott Smith. It seems there's never a day goes by without some form of warning about the environment around us in the press. And as climate change continues to take hold and alter that environment, how do we, the people, deal with those changes? But also, how can we be empowered to make better or different decisions about how to protect and preserve not only the environment immediately around us here in Connecticut, but further afield as well? I sat down with Sylvain de Guise, director of an organisation called Connecticut Sea Grant, and Judy Benson, the organisation's communications coordinator, to find out more about what Sea Grant is all about and its mission. So we are at Connecticut Sea Grant. Welcome to the Connecticut East This Week podcast. So talk to us about what is Sea Grant, because there may be people out there who are saying, well, it's obviously something to do with water possibly, but that's about as much as I know.
Sea Grant is a national organization funded by NOAA with an office or a program in each of the coastal and Great Lakes states in the United States. So there's 34 Sea Grant programs. Most of them are university-based, and what we do essentially is research, extension, and education related to everything coastal and marines that is relevant to our respective states. For example, Rhode Island still has a lot of offshore fisheries, and we don't do as much of offshore fisheries in Connecticut, but we have a very robust shellfish aquaculture industry that we spend more of our time and effort supporting.
Now, Sea Grant is part of sort of a collaborative of 34 Sea Grants across the United States. As an organization, overall, it's been around for coming up to almost 60 years. Connecticut is probably about 35 of those.
Yeah, we're 30-some years old. We celebrated our 30th anniversary 3 or 4 years ago.
Talk to us about, the larger overall picture of Sea Grant. How did it come about?
So it came about as the equivalent of the land grant program that's been around for well over 100 years. And some legislators in D.C. thought that there might be value of having a similar program related to our coast. It started with a lot of emphasis on fisheries, and it evolved with changing needs. Right now, there's 4 national focus areas. There's sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, healthy coastal ecosystems, resilient communities and economies, and looking at workforce development and environmental literacy we call it from K to grade, with the understanding that those things are all related, right? You don't fish if there's no fish, and you don't support a robust economy if there's no coastal activities, coastal tourism, coastal related programs.
Judy, talk to us about where the money comes from and also the partner, because again, NOAA is the partner, along obviously with where we are in Connecticut, the University of Connecticut. NOAA is a huge organisation, and I think probably many people just think, they do the weather, but there's so much more than that.
Well, NOAA's part of the Department of Commerce, so we have that, economic focus sort of that sort of permeates through all NOAA programs, as well as the, environmental focus. NOAA, if people don't know, it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, so they provide for Sea Grant approximately approximately half our funding, and the other half comes from the state of Connecticut. So it's a real hybrid program.
We are at the lovely Avery Point Yukon campus, which is just absolutely gorgeous, overlooking Long Island Sound. How important is obviously the relationship, of course, with Yukon? Because Yukon is really a national treasure, really. I mean, it's certainly a state treasure.
Well, we fund a lot of research at Yukon. We work in partnership with a lot of the scientists here. They bring to us, the current issues that are really pressing in terms of, we try to fund projects as much as possible that are really directly relevant to better management, better stewardship, better understanding of Long Island Sound going forward, especially given the pressures of climate change and the changing ecosystem and whatnot that we're seeing. So how we can better understand that and better respond to it through our research.
And if I might add, we're also trying to support programs, including research and extension, that are relevant to our stakeholders. For example, we had shellfish farmers whose clients started asking them, are there microplastics in the shellfish that I'm buying from you? So we can understand those concerns. We can turn around and support research projects that look at the presence of microplastics in shellfish. And it just so happens that oysters are very selective at what they eat, and they're really good at discriminating microplastics and spitting them out, so that we can support objective science-based research and then turn that back into fact sheets and inform shellfish farmers, who then can turn those fact sheets to their clients in a manner that my mother would understand.
You mentioned it earlier in the interview about sort of like the core things that some of the core things which are relevant right now for you. I mean, and seafood obviously is such a big thing, and sustaining seafood. Talk to us a little bit more about that, because that's like a collaboration, as you say. It's like Rhode Island does maybe a little bit more of it, because maybe their fishing fleet is a little bit more robust than parts of Connecticut. But it is important. I mean, people they want to know that they're eating healthy food. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are concerned with the concerns of the people we serve, and I often refer to my mother as a typical person who needs to understand what we have to say and how we say it. But we are, in Connecticut, we're very conscious about supporting the very robust shellfish aquaculture industry, the burgeoning seaweed aquaculture industry. And as we do that, we try to do that in a very inclusive manner, from working with state agencies on permit applications, on regulatory concerns, and being the interface between regulators and users and practitioners. And we try to develop tools. For example, we developed a shellfish aquaculture mapping atlas, where people can understand with a click what farms are located where, what areas someone might want to submit a permit application for, and how those are managed, whether those are shellfish grown at the bottom or shellfish grown in cages. We also try to be at the interface of the industry and the greater public. For example, there were concerns about in public meetings about what aquaculture gear might look like, and rather than say it's right or it's wrong, we would show up at meetings with cages, so that people understand what it looks like, how big it is, and how that might affect their view of Long Island Sound, rather than having an abstract concept of something huge that would completely block their view. So we're an all-inclusive program, and we work at the interface of people, science, and perception of issues.
Judy, talk to us a little bit about, obviously, outreach, because that's important as well. And it's like Sylvain has just sort of touched upon that. You touch so many different stakeholders, from municipal people to to students. So talk to us about that, because it is important to get the message out there all the time, especially above all the noise that's out there as well.
Oh, yeah. If I could just segue or add on to what Sylvain was saying, I also wanted to add that we work with recreational shellfishing as well, and supporting the local recreational shellfish commissions, and with information and other support services, and also seafood safety classes for people who are working in the industry. So those are two additional very important elements of our seafood portfolio. As far as outreach, we reach out in a number of ways. We do social media. I'm the editor of Racklines, which is a biannual magazine that's provided free to the public to to individuals as well as libraries, nature centers, schools, colleges, a whole range of outlets throughout the state. Very proud of the magazine. It's regularly wins awards in national contests, and so I'm very proud of that. And we try to feature articles that the interested general public would find compelling, write it in a manner that's sort of not dumbed down, but not too technical either. Sort of the sweet spot, is what we try to hit for our readership. And then we do outreach, in some of the more traditional methods as well, just being at events like the Milford Oyster Festival, which draw a lot of people every year. We have a couple of guided paddles coming up, one on the lower Connecticut River, one in the Stuart McKinley Wildlife Refuge that our staff is leading in September. We do beach cleanups, which draw in a lot of interested volunteers to help us out. We have a Don't Trash Long Island Sound campaign going on right now, which is encouraging people to switch from single-use plastics to just be more conscientious about their trash and recycling habits and that sort of thing.
It's just a constant thing, isn't it? I mean, it's like, I always say it's the drip feed effect. You just have to keep putting it out there in small bits every now and again, just to keep reminding people, hey, clear up behind yourself, or, be mindful about what you're doing out here, because it's your environment. If you don't care about it, there's only so much organisations can do. It's like everyone's involved in this, isn't it? We're just going to quickly go back to Rack Lines. I've got it here, and just for the listeners, it is a beautiful full-colour magazine and just stunning photography in there. How long does it take you to do that? They take time.
It's a few months for each issue.
I was going to say, because the stories, just the stories alone, gathering the stories and then all, putting it together, it is a beautiful looking magazine.
Yeah,
so.
Try to bring in different writers for every issue, so we get different voices in the magazine, which I'm very, I think is really keeps it fresh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Judy, you want to say a few words about our upcoming issue?
The upcoming issue is going to be a special issue. This will be the fall-winter issue. It's youth voices that we're going to be featuring. We offered scholarships to 3 Avery Point students and 3 students from a New Haven high school to write personal essays about their relationship to nature and their views on climate change. So it's going to be a really interesting issue, and I'm just really excited about getting their thoughts out there as they're, coming into the world and trying to understand their relationship with the environment and what they're going to be dealing with in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that is so important because, students get a bit of a bad, rap, don't they? It's like people go, oh, they don't care about this and they don't care about that. But the reality is, majority of young people do actually care passionately about their environment and want to do better things. So that sounds like that's going to be an absolutely great, addition to have a look at. The other thing I wanted to touch upon with you as well is that you have other partnerships as well. The campus that we're on, as we said, is Avery Point in Groton, where Project Oceanology is as well, which is another great organisation. So I know that you actually have a very good relationship with Project O. Talk to us a little bit about that as well, because again, that's education, 2 great organisations coming together.
Yeah, so we care deeply about educating the next generation, not only the next generation of scientists, the next generation of leaders, but also the next generation of voters. Try to levy the energy of the next generation for their long-term environment. Project O is a good friend on campus, and they receive students who get an in-person, on-the-water opportunity to learn more about Long Island Sound. And we try to leverage the expertise of our partners, but not duplicate it. So what Sea Grant does is the mirror image. We, rather than targeting our education programs at students, we target our education programs at teachers, often with on-the-water workshop. We have a mentor-teacher program where newer teachers learn from more seasoned teachers, and learning from a teacher, they get what works and what doesn't work in the classroom or out at the beach. So we focus on training the teachers that then reach out to a broader diversity of kids, including those that may not have the opportunity to come to Project O and have an in-person experience.
Talk to us as well. You mentioned obviously research is a big thing for Sea Grant, not just for Connecticut Sea Grant, but for the collaborative, as it were. Offshore wind, we were talking just before we started the interview, has now become a very big hot button issue. Talk to us about your involvement with offshore wind and what you're doing to help communicate out what that is all about.
Yeah, so just before we focus on offshore wind, research is an important part of our portfolio because we can turn concerns into action, into generating objective science-based information that we can then share with people. So we don't say this is right, this is wrong, but we generate or we translate information information in a way that is manageable and usable by people as leaders, as managers, but also as informed citizens. Offshore wind is an issue that has been in the news a lot. It's been polarizing, and there's been a lot of other parties looking at the impacts on aquatic ecosystems of putting wind turbines in the water, the installation, the management of those turbines. And one point that was underaddressed was, what's the relationship between those wind farms and people on the coast, right? So we are supporting our second now, our social science research initiative. There's a lot of expertise on biology. There's been a lot less expertise that has been leveraged to understand the challenges that face coastal communities, the opportunities that face coastal community, and the potential for synergy between, for example, developing wind farms and offshore aquaculture that's also in the news. So we supported researchers whose focus is on understanding the social aspects of those issues. And we have an upcoming symposium with a diversity of researchers that were part of this initiative to try to, again, draw the big conclusions and whatever we do it better in the future.
How do you combat, that misinformation, which sadly we all live with so much these days? I mean, social media, and I'm not just picking on social media, but it has become sort of the vehicle where a majority of misinformation does get bandied around, and people seem very quick to just pass things on without actually doing their own research. How do you try and combat that? Because science is coming under constant pressure, sadly, because people are just too happy to pass something along and not bother to actually look into it.
Yeah, so more than combat, I would say that we, by our very definition of who we are and what we do, we don't have a horse in the race, right? We don't say this is good, this is bad. We don't benefit from a decision or another. We do not do advocacy. We don't promote something, or we don't say this is bad, right? So we are the carriers of objective science-based information. So we're not going to fight with people, but we're going to, for example, we're not going to say aquaculture cages are good or bad, but we're going to show up at a meeting and provide a very visual, here, this is what it looks like, and you make your own decisions. Same thing for offshore wind, right? We support objective science, we support social science, and we share that information with whoever is interested, and people can make their own decisions whether it's good or bad. But we fight disinformation by providing objective science-based information from a third party that has no specific interest in any decision, whether it's good or bad.
Just like good journalism, it should actually just supply the facts and let the reader, the listener, etc., make their own decision based on, as you say, nothing but factual information. I want to close the interview, because we're almost at the end of it, sadly, on this occasion, and ask you both just the same question. In both your time here at Sea Grant and the work that you both do, how well are we doing? Are we doing well with, looking after our environment, or do we need a little bit of a kick in the pants to just remind us that maybe we need to be doing a bit more? Judy?
I think we all need to be doing more. I think keeping people engaged, I think, is very, very important. Letting people know that they do have, that they can make an impact, right? I think that's very, very important. I think...
We have gotten away from that a bit, haven't we?
Yeah, it's really hard to get discouraged and just to disengage. And I really want to focus on trying to find ways to engage people and to keep them looking forward, looking positive, letting them know that it's not hopeless. We can't give up.
And it certainly is a lot better. I mean, Long Island Sound, from my understanding from 30, 40 years ago, is in a lot better state of health than it was back then. So, as you said, we still need to keep working on it. But it sounds like at least we are moving, hopefully, in the right direction. So we just need to keep that forward motion going.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
I would agree that part of our mission is to empower people with knowledge and acknowledge that things change, right? 20, 30 years ago, there was a very robust lobster fisheries in Long Island Sound. Unfortunately, that has faded off quite a bit, but there's now more shellfish aquaculture. There's now more black sea bass. How do we understand change, and how do we understand our impact on change, for good or for bad, and how do we empower people with information so that they can take action in the direction that they want?
So climate change isn't all necessarily bad, but it's not all necessarily good either.
The climate is changing, and we have to understand how it is changing in order to understand what we can do to mitigate change or to adapt to change.
Well, it's been great talking to you. Thank you ever so much. Of course, if any anybody wants to find out more information about the work that you do, they can go to seagrant.ucon.edu, I believe is the website. And also, as you say, there's rack lines available as well, that lovely magazine, the next one coming out very soon. It's been great talking to you both. Thank you for educating us just a little bit, and we look forward to speaking to you again in the future, because we always like to do follow-up stories as well. But in the meantime, Silva and Judy, ever so many thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you
for having us.
And again, if you want to find out more about Connecticut Sea Grant and the work that it does, and maybe get involved in some of its volunteer events, or get on the subscription list for its award-winning magazine Racklines, then head over to their website at seagrant.ucon.edu. Connecticut East this week is made possible by the Connecticut Technology Council, recognizing STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as critical to Connecticut's economy, providing jobs, careers, and business opportunities. Help celebrate the leadership of 45 outstanding women in STEM as we honor them at the 19th Annual Women of Innovation Awards event on Tuesday, October 22nd in Branford. Hear winners' inspiring stories and how these dynamic women are leading the way forward. Learn more at ct.gov/women of innovation. Nutmeg Pharmacy, reminding you it's flu season. Get your flu, COVID, and RSV vaccinations now and protect you and your loved ones. We are a full-service, independent pharmacy group providing prescriptions, over-the-counter medications, and more, plus free local delivery from our locations in Higganum, Moodus, Centerbrook, Taftville, and New London. Find out more about us and our services at nutmegpharmacy.com. And Media Here and Now is a full-service content creation agency based in Eastern Connecticut and producing video, audio, podcasts, and digital content for social media, online, and broadcast use for all types of businesses, organizations, and nonprofits. If you need a new company video or radio advert or want to start your own podcast, then get in touch and see how we can help you at mediahereandnow.com.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Time now for a look at other stories making the headlines this week. A new report shows Connecticut's post-pandemic job growth lags behind the rest of the nation. Edwin J. Vieira from the Connecticut News Service has this report.
The State of Working Connecticut report finds personal income, gross domestic product, and job growth are all falling behind the U.S. Though low-wage workers saw significant wage growth that helped with their cost of living, post-pandemic inflation has eroded those gains. Report author Patrick O'Brien with Connecticut Voices for Children says one reason for the state's slow job growth is its overall unaffordability.
You need to make the state more affordable for families to stay here and grow here, and for also some families to move here. And so you could think about, addressing affordable housing, affordable child care, a child tax credit, those type of things that make it just more affordable for families to live in the state.
Slower economic growth can be attributed to the lagging recovery of public sector jobs, which plummeted around the start of the pandemic. But nationwide, these jobs hit pre-pandemic levels around mid-2022. Connecticut is close to the national average, but hasn't reached pre-pandemic levels. The report shows building up the public sector workforce could also significantly reduce wage inequality. I'm Edwin J. Vieira.
The Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, the state's largest non-partisan organization of municipal leaders, has released a new flood survey. The 2-year study, called Strategic Flooding Mitigation for Connecticut, was undertaken by the engineering firm Fuss & O'Neill. Eric Mass is vice president and project manager at Fuss & O'Neill and explains some of the areas they were looking at in the study.
Better understand the increased frequency and severity of flooding and what are the challenges that communities are facing throughout Connecticut. Our goal was to develop actionable, both municipal and state level policy, programmatic, and funding related recommendations that hopefully will help reduce the impacts of flooding on cities and towns in Connecticut. There's a lot of flood mitigation programs that are already in place, not to reinvent the wheel, but to look at how can we do things better and build on what's already in place.
Mass said they found several areas of concern, but 2 stood out the most from their research.
Drainage-related flooding was cited as the most common type of flooding throughout the state. regardless of community size, inland, coastal. Most communities are dealing with the kind of flooding on a routine basis that we saw last month, that drainage, intense rainfall flooding. We also heard that flood damage to transportation infrastructure, so flooding of roadways, washouts, and also residential areas was cited as the most urgent flooding impact statewide.
The report also found that many municipalities say they have inadequate funding to deal with major flooding issues, as well as a lack of dedicated staff trained in flood risk management. The full report can be found at ccm-ct.org/flood-study. Connecticut Congressman Joe Courtney, along with military, state and local officials, held a topping-off ceremony recently for the Connecticut National Guard's new Readiness Center. The occasion marked a milestone in the construction of the new center based in the town of Putnam in the northeast of the state, which will become the new home of the 643rd Military Police Company. Courtney said the new facility welcomes back the Guard to the quiet corner of Connecticut after it was forced to withdraw from the area back in 2007.
It was a BRAC Realignment Commission decision that was made in 2005 in Washington that closed Putnam Armory. And, there's probably good reasons that you could point to in terms of the age of the facility, et cetera. But the bottom line is this is a region of Connecticut in which size and density of veterans, given, again, the population, was driving, again, a lot of the force to get this project to where it is today.
The $30 million project will replace the military police's current center in Westbrook, Connecticut, which was built back in the 1950s and is no longer considered fit for purpose. Courtney said projects like these are essential on so many levels.
This is a legacy project. This is something that, people can look at, for years and years from now in terms of just, what it means for, as I said, our state and our country to have a readiness facility like this and contributing so much to the local economy and the local community that's here.
The new center marks the first time the Connecticut National Guard will have a permanent presence in the northeast of the state in almost 15 years. The new 39,000 square foot building is set to be completed in the fall of 2025 and will provide the Guard with state-of-the-art training facilities and the ability to quickly deploy to assist the local community in the event of an emergency or natural disaster. And the Connecticut Republican Party has sent a letter to Governor Lamont and the Commissioner of Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, urging them to be transparent when it comes to offshore wind contracts and projects. Recently, Lamont's administration pulled out of a 3-state deal with neighbors Rhode Island and Massachusetts over what was reported as his concerns over costs and that he didn't wish to burden the residents of the state and their already high electricity bills. However, Lamont's comments are not being taken at face value by the Connecticut GOP, who are demanding the release of any procurement contracts, including pricing, before any future deals are signed. The turnabout is further confusing after Lamont and his administration signed a 3-state memorandum of understanding back in October of 2023 so that costs for future offshore wind projects would be split between the states, helping to make them more affordable as costs for offshore wind projects continue to escalate. The administration's silence also comes at a time when Danish energy company Ørsted recently announced their Revolution Wind offshore wind farm that will produce power for Connecticut will be a year late in being finalized due to onshore construction issues. And Avangrid, who operates United Illuminating in the state, could be taken off the board as a public traded company and supplier if its parent company, Spanish firm Iberdrola, manages to acquire remaining shares in Avangrid that could jeopardize further Connecticut's electricity customers and electricity costs. That's all from us for this edition. Do send us your questions and story ideas to the show via our website at connecticut-east.com or Facebook or Twitter at Connecticut East and on Instagram at Connecticut East This Week. And you can listen to the show again on our social platforms, on demand, and by asking your smart speaker to play Connecticut East This Week podcast. And please like, follow, and share on your social media too. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thank you for listening.